Despite residents' serious concerns about cost, need, and transparency, the Township of Tiny decided to go ahead with the new $25 million town hall. It will be called Tiny Administrative Center and will serve city's 13,000 residents. During last week's council meeting, Janet Stewart of Unity Design Studio presented the plan. Unity Design Studio will be paid a little over $1.6 million for its work. Stewart said the new administrative building would be community hub with enhanced public services and net zero energy and carbon goals. During the meeting, residents expressed serious concerns about the high cost and the necessity of the new building, suggesting that the current facilities might suffice or that a simpler, less expensive design could be considered. Controversy arose over the council's decision not to subject the project to a public vote, with many questioning the lack of broader community consultation. However, Mayor David Evans defended the decision, stating that the council had approved the project based on thorough research and planning. He highlighted long-term benefits and assured that cost control measures and funding options were being explored to minimize the taxpayer burden. Following is the video of the meeting.
Good morning. This is Mayor David Evans, the Township of Tiny, and welcome to the Public Information Center number 3, actually, for the new Township of Tiny Administrative Center. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's a pleasure to have you here, those of you on Zoom and those of you on YouTube. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to give us some input on the public portion of the building. As you know, Council has approved this project and directed the Township of Tiny Administrative Center Committee and staff toward building a new administrative center here in the Township of Tiny. Today we'll be sharing some of the major project milestones and renderings of the interior and the exterior of our new building. The purpose of these meetings is to seek feedback from all of you on the public features of the Administrative Center, such as programming space, for example, a place for recreation programs, perhaps, and community events. The public spaces, both interior and outdoor, and the accessibility features of all areas of the building itself. I also want to know, everyone to know that Council is moving forward with the creation of a Township of Tiny Admin Center Ad Hoc Committee, which will be comprised of members of the public, a staff resource, and a member of Council to review the suggestions from all of the PICs and other input from public, and to make recommendations about the public space components of the Township of Tiny Administrative Center. The application deadline for the ad hoc committee is July 29th, and information is available on our website, www.tiny.ca. The application deadline, as I mentioned, will be July 29th. Just want to make sure everybody gets it in time, and we'll be considering all applicants at a future council meeting. We're very excited about the future of the community hub, and we look forward to hearing from you on the ways that we can make this a place for everyone to come together and improve our services for our residents and make Tiny a better place, not just now, but for future residents. Thank you very much for participating, and I hope you enjoy the presentation. I'll now pass it on to Tim Leach, our Director of Public Works. Tim?
Great. Thank you, Mayor Evans, for the introduction, and welcome everybody to this will be the third PIC, where the first one was in December, and then we've had a previous one to this. We are going to be on through the PIC from about 10 p.m. until noon. At noon, we will be shutting down. I'll just go quickly through the agenda. So we're going to start off. We're going to go through some key terms, some housekeeping and protocol for this PIC, and PIC is a public information center. Unity Design Studios, who's our architect for the project, will be doing their presentation to show the building. And then after that's completed, we will have a question and answer session about the public features and accessibility. And then prior to completion, we'll advise the public on what the next steps are through the project. And then as noted, it'll be complete at noon today. Some of the key terms that you're going to hear throughout the presentation today that we just want to make sure everybody understands what they mean using acronyms. AODA, which is Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. Throughout the presentation, you'll find Unity will be presenting what some of our accessibility features are that are going to be in the new building. TTAC, which is the Township of Tiny Administrative Center. This is the committee that was set up, made up of staff and 2 council members to develop the new program. And the TTAC committee, as is indicated, is the Township of Tiny Administrative Center committee comprised of staff and 2 members of council. Also, you're going to hear a little bit about our TTAC ad hoc committee. This is a public committee that is being developed to help us make recommendations on the public spaces for the new town hall. And I want to encourage anybody who wants to participate in that. The closing date to submit your name to be part of this committee is July 29th. And so we do encourage anybody from the public to get involved and help us determine what you would like to see as far as public space in this new building. And then Unity, or UDS, is Unity Design Studios. This is the architect for the TTAC project. And through some of the previous minutes and documentation, you may see the name Let Architects, and it's this same company. So throughout the day, to try and keep it organized and make sure that the event goes off as we hope. So here's just some housekeeping and protocols for the PIC. The PSCs are intended to seek feedback on the public spaces and accessibility of the TTAC. Input from the PIC will assist in the planning for the public features for the center and also for budget considerations. Interior office space will be designated, designed to the Ontario Public Service Modern Office Space Guideline V2.0. So that will be the part that the staff will be occupying. Today's PIC will be to discuss the public features. So in our Q&A session, that's what we'll be talking about, are the public features and accessibility of the TTAC. And as noted earlier, that will begin once the Unity design has completed their part of the presentation. Questions will be responded to in order of receipt and directed to the appropriate resource during the session. Any unanswered questions or additional questions can be submitted through the new town hall at tiny.ca. We want to make sure that we will address as many questions from as many people as possible. So when we see different people, so if an individual has many questions, we encourage you to, during that question, ask as detailed as possible for the one, because we're going to try to make sure that as many different people get answers throughout these sessions as possible. And that will be managed throughout the process. Again, just want to emphasize that this is about the interiors, public and exterior public space for the new facility, and as our mayor did outline, that's what the main focus of this PIC will be about. Statements or inappropriate, anonymous, and or repeat questions will not be addressed throughout the process. So when we're going through the questions, if you ask a question, it may have already been answered, so we will not be answering similar questions twice to make sure that we maximize the time and for the whole entire presentation, and make sure we answer as many questions as we can from as many as public people as we can throughout the process. So we really appreciate your patience through this process, and we also appreciate people that do ask questions and will listen in on our presentation. It's important to make sure that we get the public's feedback on these types of public spaces within the facility. So again, thank you for attending. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Janet Stewart from Unity to go through the features of the building. Thank you, and Janet, take it away.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you also, Mayor Evans, and thanks to Tiny Township staff and to all of you who have joined online. I'm really pleased to be here on behalf of Unity Design Studio. Our team has been working with the township since last fall to develop a schematic design for the Administrative Center project, and I'm pleased to have this opportunity to take the next 50 minutes or so to walk you through the design. We are asking for your suggestions on what types of public uses and public use spaces that you would like to see prioritized in the design. So we are looking forward to getting your feedback. So just to begin, at the outset of the project, we set 5 goals that we felt the project should strive to meet in order for it to set itself up for success for the next 60 plus years, as that will be the project's anticipated lifespan. And these 5 goals are to employ low-impact site development strategies, to enable universal accessibility, to enhance public services and spaces, to achieve regenerative design, and to achieve resilience by meeting a post-disaster standard of design and construction. And why do we use the 60-year figure for a lifespan? Because that is the benchmark established for life cycle assessments of buildings by authorities such as the National Research Council, the Canadian Standards Association, the Canadian and U.S. Green Building Councils, and the National and Ontario Building Codes. So the first goal has to do with low-impact site development strategies so that we can minimize the overall impact of the development on the overall site. Now, the site being township-owned and having proximity to both the operations complex and the waterworks and the potential to tie into the Tiny Trail system offers us much beauty, much passive recreational potential, and access to the resources that we need for the development. Some of you might remember that decades ago, this entire site was earmarked for development as a potential industrial park, and then sometime later, potentially for aggregate extraction. But the intent now is to retain its public use as the administrative center, but also to protect and enhance the site's natural features. To assist in achieving a low-impact development, the township is currently undertaking 5 site studies and assessments to guide us in determining the best strategies for locating driveways, parking areas, types of stormwater and sanitary management measures, locations and types of planting buffers, as well as the location of the new building itself. So the first study underway is an analysis of the site's hydrology, hydrogeological, and wellhead protection zones. And you can see here is an aerial view of the site. It extends from Concession Road 9 East, south to Concession Road 8 East, and you can see the wellhead protection zone encompasses the southern portion of the site. And by looking at these systems, we simply want to ensure that the placement of site development features will not negatively alter groundwater or surface water flows, and that all aspects of the development remain outside of the current wellhead protection zone. The second study underway, we look at traffic impact. This will guide us on the design, the size, the location, and the configuration of the new entrance driveway, and any potential impacts as a result of traffic growth along Concession 9 East over the next 10 years. This growth obviously would be attributed to increased flows to accommodate staff and visitors to the new site and building. The third study underway is an environmental impact study. This is being undertaken with oversight from the Severn Sound Environmental Agency. And the time frame for this study extends from early spring of this year to late fall of this year to ensure that all natural features or occurrences are captured, as we are aware of a documented population of ice-aged or forked three-awned grass at the nearby Huronia Airport. So we are planning to undertake a detailed survey in September for this very rare species, as that is the window for best chances of discovery. This will be completed by an experienced biologist with specialized skill in plant identification. Overall, the study will include mapping of vegetation community types, screening for endangered butternut and black ash trees, bat habitat trees, amphibian breeding grounds, both dawn and evening breeding bird species, and assessment of any potential species at risk. The assessments will require species-specific surveys and specialized methodologies appropriate to the season, time of day, and weather conditions. And what we will learn from this is what portions of the site can be developed, which should be avoided, and any opportunities for enhancement, restoration, or monitoring of any natural features. The fourth study underway is a Stage 1 archaeological assessment. This will determine the presence of any archaeological resources on site that might indicate occupation by groups, which might include the Beausoleil First Nation, Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation, Chippewas of Rama First Nation, Huron-Wendat Nation, Métis Nation of Ontario, Moose Deer Point First Nation, and Wata Mohawks. Now, the team conducting this assessment has built up strong, positive working relationships with these groups. And while direct engagement is not typically required for a Phase 1 assessment, we do recognize that this will enrich and further the township's relationships with these communities. Now, we now know that the assessment will involve direct consultation with the Huron-Wendat Nation, the Moose Deer Point First Nation, and the Wata Mohawks, as they have come forward to express interest in the project. And so we will be coordinating directly with them as we conduct the field work. The fifth and final site study is the undertaking of a tree preservation plan. This will identify and map existing trees on the site with a view to evaluate the health and value of trees to determine preservation priorities. This preservation plan will be adhered to during all stages of design development, and construction. And Mayor Evans has also decreed that any tree required to be removed for the purpose of the development, 3 new trees will be planted. And in addition, we will ensure any lumber harvested as a result be repurposed in the construction of the development. The second goal that we set for the project is to enable the highest degree of universal accessibility to ensure that the administrative center will welcome and accommodate everyone, no matter their age or level of abilities. You know, universal accessibility is fundamentally about these 3 things: ensuring safety, dignity, and independence for all people. Tiny Township has a very diverse population of English-speaking, French-speaking, Indigenous, and immigrant permanent and seasonal residents, all of whom represent multiple generations and who have varying degrees of physical and cognitive abilities, and all having unique needs. Inclusivity is what we're aiming to achieve so that everyone feels welcome and able to enjoy the facility as independently as possible and with the dignity that we all deserve. Here in Ontario, we have many accessibility guidelines to follow. We have Canadian Standards Association B65118, Accessible Design for the Built Environment. We have AODA, Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. We have the City of London's Accessibility Guidelines, which have been adopted by many municipalities across Ontario. And we have what has been legislated into the 2024 Ontario Building Code. However, the one that we have chosen to use as our guide for this project is the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification Guideline, which exceeds all of the others in best practices and is one of the most respected accessibility guidelines in Canada. So here is the concept that we have developed for the ground floor for the new facility, with all the major space uses identified. There is an area that's earmarked for a partial basement on the left-hand side for staff facilities, records and equipment storage, and an emergency operations center with access to a freight elevator. The darker shade spaces that you can see on this plan signify administrative and departmental space, with the lighter shaded areas signifying the public spaces. So let me walk you through some examples of the accessibility initiatives that we've incorporated. There will be a passenger drop-off and pickup zone with clear markings at the entrance to the site, with tactile, accessible indicators and ample space for maneuvering. The area will have ample illumination and be well signed. Accessible parking spaces will be clearly marked and have level access aisles and curb ramps. In addition, there will be tactile indicators to and from accessible parking areas to the building's main entrances. And there are 4 main entrances to the building, 2 front entrances dedicated for public and 2 rear entrances dedicated for staff. All building entrances will be accessible, having the tower-style power-operated door activators, hardware, and access controls. Vestibules and public service areas will all be accessible and will feature a really logical arrangement of circulation routes and facilities, so there is little chance of getting lost. There will be fully accessible paths of travel to all areas of the building. Major circulation corridors will be 5 feet wide, featuring 8-foot diameter turning circles at all changes of direction, as signified by the wheelchair symbol. And at the center of the public lobby will be the customer service counter. This counter will be universally accessible with various heights for sitting and standing, adequate knee space, and privacy panels. There will be gender-neutral and universal family washroom facilities for both public and staff, adjacent to the lobby and customer service areas. The format for gender-neutral washrooms provides everyone with a lockable private room equipped with a toilet and a wash basin for enhanced privacy and hygiene. No 5-foot-high stalls with gaps around panels and no shared sinks. There will be intuitive wayfinding throughout the facility, supported by a number of sensory techniques. So you see these 3 symbols overlaid on the plan. The symbol on the left signifies signage, in this case Braille, and languages other than French and English will also be included. The second symbol signifies auditory experience and use of acoustic mitigation so that spaces do not become overwhelmed by sound reflections, which can cause confusion in public buildings. The third symbol signifies light levels and how varying levels of brightness and use of natural light can make navigating a building more intuitive and far more pleasant. Assistive listening and communication enhancements will be provided in the council chambers, all meeting rooms, and customer service areas. These systems transmit amplified sound via hearing aids, headsets, or other devices. And some of the examples of the technologies available include infrared, induction loop, FM systems, and portable systems are also available from the same audiovisual suppliers that will be equipping the conference and meeting spaces. Other measures that we are really mindful of, for instance, is to ensure that all floor surfaces are slip resistant, have no disorienting glare or busy patterns, as well as ample clearance and supports for service dogs. Adding service dogs to our language of signage symbols is a way to include a working dog presence in our buildings, even when an actual service animal isn't there. used with enough frequency and over a long enough period of time that it becomes learned and culturally recognizable, it will serve to normalize the presence of working dogs in public buildings. Moving back now to the project goals, the third goal in the design is to ensure that we provide ample opportunities to enhance public services and spaces, whether, as the mayor mentioned, it be spaces for public gatherings, indoor and outdoor, or opportunities for passive or active recreation on the site, or to have spaces to hold community group meetings or broader community events or celebrations, even opportunities to display or incorporate the work of local artists and artisans. These are areas that we're specifically asking for your input on, what you'd like to see prioritized or incorporated into the design. So let me walk you through some of the public areas of the facility that we've incorporated. So we'll start with the council chambers, number 1, whose circular shape and prominent location is very much a defining building feature. It will accommodate fixed seating for council and staff and up to 135 members of the public seated in chairs. The chambers will incorporate a retractable acoustic partition to allow for overflow into the lobby space and will feature a central skylight. Directly off the public lobby are 4 meeting rooms signified by the number 2, of varying sizes, all with full video conferencing capability. One large meeting room will accommodate up to 20 people. It's across from the council chambers. And one for up to 12 people at the other end of the public lobby, and 2 that will accommodate up to 4 to 6 people on either side of the customer service counter. Number 3, adjacent to the council chambers is a community room that will accommodate approximately 200 people in chairs or 130 people seated at tables. At one end of the community room, number 4, is a large catering kitchen and servery that opens up to the community room. And at the other end is space for table and chair storage. So that allows us to set up events in any of the public areas. The community room will also have access to an outdoor terrace for indoor-outdoor events that could be screened to maintain privacy from the main terrace that surrounds it. And this main terrace will lead to and from parking areas and connects the 2 main entrances into the administrative center. At each of the entrances is a large canopy that provides cover for bicycle and e-bike storage, along with charging stations. And the 2 entrances, as signified by number 7 here, are connected on the inside by the public lobby, creating circulation that moves essentially in a circular fashion. So navigation is intuitive and there's less opportunity to get disoriented. And the public lobby itself is designed to be a dynamic space anchored by a generous public service counter that occurs in the center of the space. Above the counter is a linear skylight that will always flood the space with natural light during the day. And the lobby space is intended to double as a gallery space as well, featuring curved stone walls that are intended to be a backdrop for the showcasing of community arts and artifacts. There is public seating incorporated along the perimeter of the community room across from the customer service counter, and that seating has direct access to the public washrooms and universal family washroom. And additional opportunities to incorporate the work of artisans include a permanent feature wall in the lobby, an outdoor sculpture at each entrance, and a decorative screen on the outside of the windows into the council chambers. All of these features could be the subject of a public art competition. And once our site studies are complete and we have sited the building, there will be future opportunities to develop and connect to other public features such as seating areas, passive recreation areas, and trails. So we hope that you've made a note of some of these features and you'll let us know what you like or perhaps what we've missed altogether. So I'd like to share with you some schematic renderings that we've created of the interior and exterior of the building to give you an idea of the look and feel that we were proposing for the spaces. So the first is an interior view, as you can see here, of the public lobby with the main public service counter on the right. The major materials that we are looking for use in this building are natural wood, natural stone, glass, and polished concrete with metal accents. Looking at the right-hand side, you can see the public service counter with a long linear skylight above that provides the space with a dramatic connection to the sky. The intent is to utilize the structure of the skylight to create portals for privacy between distinct service areas. These portals could be panels created by metal artisans or finished carpenters made from wood reclaimed from the site. The counter is long enough to provide service kiosks or computers for public use, and the linear skylight will create dynamic lighting throughout the day in the lobby. On the left-hand side, you can see large pivoting panels that open from the community room and which will feature soft seating between them to create a linear lounge area. And what look like leaves that have blown into the space from outside on the floor is a suggestion of thin bronze metal sculptures embedded directly into the concrete floor, something that might enchant children and adults alike. In this view, we are looking at the council chambers from the public lobby with acoustic partition fully retracted. To the left of this view is a seating area with a feature wall whose design could be the subject of a public art competition, as mentioned earlier. And now we move directly into the council chambers to give you a sense of scale and light quality that we're intending for the space. Now, the chambers will undergo a detailed design to ensure that all technologies related to connectivity, audiovisual, accessibility, sight lines, security, lighting, and appropriate furnishings are all accounted for and well integrated. We now move to the administrative office area, where all departmental managers and staff will be accommodated along the outer perimeter of the building that curves and looks out onto a natural forested area. The features of the space include exposed wood ceilings and walls, and all workstations are grouped into team pods of 8 to minimize that kind of open concept office feeling and to have access to natural light and views. All offices are on the interior with all glass fronts to take advantage of the same natural light and views. Staff growth for the future has been factored into the design in a modular fashion with an additional bay accommodating 3 offices and 8 workstations. And this has been added for this purpose. And we'd like to point out that sizes for all workstations, meeting rooms, and offices follow the new December 2023 Ontario Public Service Workspace Guidelines. If we look at the exterior of the building, just outside of where we just were in the administration area, this is a view of the curved wall where we intend to capture rainwater that will fall from a shallow sloped roof along the perimeter into a rain garden that will recharge groundwater. And here is an aerial view of the building. Here you can see the curved council chambers, the community room, the long entrance canopies along the exterior terrace. Much of the roof will be flat, having drains to capture rainwater, with a shallow slope roof to shed water into the rain garden at the rear. You can see the skylight at the center of the council chambers and the tall linear skylight over the customer service counter. So going back now to the project goals, We come to our fourth goal, to achieve a regenerative design, the highest level of sustainability for the project for educational, environmental, and economic reasons. Educational, to illustrate how a building need not be complex, but can be rather simple in its approach to achieving a regenerative design. Environmental, to promote responsible resource use, conservation, and biodiversity. And economic, not just investment into long-term delivery of public services, but to increase resilience to severe climate events, probably the township's greatest risk, and to promote energy security and an emerging local bioeconomy in renewable forestry products. Just a note on a difference between sustainable and regenerative. A sustainable design focuses on minimizing negative environmental impact by using resources effectively, efficiently, and reducing waste and emissions. By contrast, a regenerative design goes beyond sustainability by actively restoring and improving the environment, creating a positive ecological footprint, and enhancing the health and resilience of the surrounding ecosystem. This involves integrating natural processes, promoting biodiversity, and contributing to the regeneration of natural systems. So, to achieve regenerative design, we have identified 4 important pathways: path to net zero energy, path to net zero carbon, path to water conservation, and path to biodiversity. So starting with path to net zero energy, what does that mean exactly? It means that the building will not burn any fossil fuels that would emit any pollutants over its operational lifetime. And for that, we have a 3-step pathway to achieve this. Step number 1 is we employ what we call a passive strategy, and that involves simply improving the thermal performance of the exterior walls and roof of the building by increasing the amount of insulation and upgrading to triple glazed windows. Step number 2, we reduce heating and cooling loads by employing geothermal wells on the site. And the principle of that is simple. Geothermal wells bring the temperature of the ground into the building that is at a constant 55 degrees Fahrenheit or 13 degrees Celsius. Think of it as the ideal temperature of a wine cellar. And we only need to heat that temperature a little bit or cool it a little bit to achieve comfortable indoor temperatures so that our HVAC equipment doesn't have to be so large or work so hard. We also employ all LED lighting, which draws negligible energy and lasts 15 plus years, in addition to incorporating vacancy sensors in spaces and daylight harvesting. And daylight harvesting are sensors in the building attached to light fixtures that dim when it detects that the light levels based on the sky outside by daylight are adequate to light the spaces inside. So it effectively dims the lights in those instances. So all of these measures puts us in good stead towards achieving step number 3, and that is to generate on-site all clean, renewable electrical energy needed to operate the entire facility now that we've minimized the heating and cooling loads and the size and amount of equipment required to heat and cool the building. So why are we doing this? You're probably asking yourself. When we factor that this facility will be completed in 2027, 3 years short of Canada's target to have 45% reduction in emissions by 2030, and 23 years short of the 2050 zero emissions target, it just makes financial sense to build net zero operational emissions into the project now, while there is funding available to pay for that. Because when zero operational emissions becomes legislated into national and provincial building codes soon, that funding will disappear. Next is our path to net zero carbon. Net zero energy is kind of 51% of the net zero equation, and net zero carbon is the other 49%. And what's the difference? Net zero carbon quantifies what is called the embodied carbon of construction materials. So before the facility is even open and operational, this examines the quantity of emissions that resulted from the manufacture of all of the other materials that are used in the construction. So we're talking, the wood, the drywall, the concrete, the steel, the aluminum, the plastics, the paint, as well as any emissions caused by transportation of these materials to the site. And so we're looking for a roadmap to achieve low to zero carbon embodied materials. And for this, again, we have a 3-step path. The first step is to employ a structure made up entirely of what's referred to as mass timber or cross-laminated timber panels and glue-laminated columns and beams. Utilizing mass timber structure is by far the best strategy to achieve net zero carbon. This is because the amount of carbon that was naturally absorbed from the atmosphere in the course of growing the wood far outweighs the amount of carbon emitted in the manufacture of all the other materials used on the project. And there is an added bonus to using mass timber in that, given the demise of the pulp and paper industry, we promote an emerging CLT industry across Ontario. The second step in our net zero carbon path is to utilize materials that have a high recycled content, which minimizes the use of raw resources, reduces the use of plastics, reduces the use of concrete and steel, which are highly polluting to manufacture, and simply limiting the number of assemblies used on the project overall. And because we are using an all wood components on the building that, when assembled together, act not only as the structure, but the building enclosure and the interior finish, we've actually eliminated a lot of other assemblies that we would need to use to cover up, say, a structure of concrete and steel. And then finally, our third step to net zero carbon is to utilize materials that have a low embodied carbon simply by virtue of them having been locally sourced or produced, thereby reducing transportation costs from where they are made to where they are assembled. And why are we doing that, you might ask? As of May 2023, the City of Toronto is the first city in North America to set whole building embodied carbon caps on new city-owned buildings. Caps are optional for private development, but future versions of the Toronto Green Standard may include mandatory requirements for all new developments. In Vancouver, new buildings are required to report their embodied carbon emissions as part of the building permit application process. And starting in January 2025, there will be mandatory reductions in embodied carbon for buildings of certain types, likely municipal ones. And this trend will only continue, especially for new municipally owned buildings. So this facility will put Tiny Township ahead of that curve, again, leading by example. Up next is our path to water conservation, again, a 3-step path. The first step is to harvest rainwater. We're getting a lot of that recently. So we want to utilize that for any irrigation or gray water conveyance. The second step is to reduce water usage by employing low-flow fixtures, water-conserving appliances, and condensate recovery on HVAC equipment. And the third step is to use drought-resistant plantings for any landscape buffers, which will eliminate the need for irrigation altogether. And why are we doing this when Ontario's 4 of the 5 Great Lakes collectively account for about 84% of North America's fresh water, 21% of the world's surface fresh water, and besides, we have a municipal water line bisecting the site. Because excessive water withdrawal can harm aquatic ecosystems, and climate change can alter precipitation patterns that lead to periods of drought. By reducing water demand, we decrease the strain on municipal water infrastructure, much of which is already at capacity across Ontario. It reduces energy needed to treat and convey water, reduces utility bills, and future-proofs buildings by making them more resilient and economically viable. So again, this project can lead by example. Our final path is to biodiversity, another 3-step path. The first step is by having committed to limiting our development footprint on the site through achieving our project goal number 1. And in doing so, we limit our disturbance of the natural landscape. The second step is to provide native planting buffers to support local wildlife. The third step is to encourage habitat connectivity by planting pollinator gardens and supporting and connecting existing wildlife corridors, which will come to light through our environmental impact assessment. And why are we doing this when Tiny's forests and farmlands vastly exceed its urban areas? Because in 2022 in Montreal, Canada was instrumental in driving the United Nations to adopt Canada's biodiversity plan globally, which resulted in the investment in Canada of $800 million in Indigenous-led conservation initiatives. Ontario's biodiversity contributes significantly to Canada's overall ecological health, making its conservation of farmland and forests important biodiversity initiatives beyond provincial borders and of crucial importance in Tiny Township. I think all of you are aware that the township contains some of the best agricultural land, in addition to the groundwater beneath the surface being some of the purest in Ontario. Again, this project can lead by example. And our 5th project goal is to design to a post-disaster standard. And in the context of building design and construction, the primary objectives of post-disaster design include enhancing the resilience, safety, and sustainability of buildings to prevent damage and ensure rapid recovery from extreme weather events such as earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, and other events. And in the Ontario Building Code, post-disaster building is defined as one that is designed to remain operational and functional during disasters to support emergency response and recovery efforts. Key aspects include structure and cladding designed to withstand seismic and wind loading, bracing of equipment and suspended fixtures, provision of emergency power, designing flexible layouts that can be easily modified, and infrastructure that can be upgraded as new technologies and materials become available. And that now concludes Unity Design Studio's portion of the presentation. Again, we thank you for your time and are grateful for any feedback that you can provide us. I now hand it over to Tim Leach to review your questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Janet, for that thorough review of the facility. So we appreciate the time and the detail that was taken in presenting this information to the public. Now we're getting into our Q&A session, and this is where the public can provide some questions to us. I just want to remind some of the protocols that we discussed earlier in the discussion. The questions should be related to the public space. That's what the intent of the PIC is. The mayor, through his introduction, has already provided the direction that we are moving forward with the facility. And so those questions will not be answered throughout, because those have been answered and direction has been set for the committee and staff to proceed. Second of all, if you do have a question, and you can submit them by going to the link that's provided on our website and through Zoom, so that will ensure that you can ask the questions, and we'll do the best to answer as many as we can. We're going to start off with one question per attendee and or person that submitted them in, just so we can make sure that we address as many people's different questions as we can. Once we go through that, we're able to return and go back through some other questions in which an individual may have multiple questions. If your name is not attached to the question, as we indicated earlier, it's going to be, we will not be answering anonymous questions. So if your address that you have with your question is just a letter, or if it's non-existent, and you still want your question read, if you can please provide your name within the question, so that way we know who we're speaking to. So at this point, we'll turn the table over to you, the public, and we'll have questions being answered. We have myself, the Director of Public Works. We have Haley LeBlanc, Director of Finance and Corporate Services, and we have our Mayor Evans, and along with Janet, also our architect, to answer the questions to the best of our ability. Those that we can't answer today, we will look at them and provide some other answers. The other key thing to note is your questions, if they do not get addressed through this next approximately an hour that we have, a little over an hour, we will be recording them. We do have the ability to capture all the questions that were asked during the presentation, so that we can ensure that we continue to look at these questions and provide the answers to the public. So at this point, we have Jean-Francois Robitaille. He's our engineering manager. He'll be the moderator and read out the questions out loud, and then we'll give you the answers to the best of our ability. Again, thank you, and we encourage your input and look forward to your questions.
Okay, so the first question we have is from Kim, and she's asking, why will the council not take this build to a public vote? And I believe Mayor Evans would like to answer this one.
Thanks, JF. And Kim, thank you for the question. I appreciate that. I'll refer back to my opening statements, and phase of the process right now is the council has approved this project. It's directed the Township Committee to move forward with building a new administrative building here in Tiny. So for those of you that are still trying to understand exactly what the reasons and the rationale are, we have a full FAQ section online, and it'll outline that the reasons for the building and the benefits of the building are frankly numerous and frankly irrefutable. We need this facility. It's something that has been in the works for a long time in the township. And all the evidence is there online. So please feel free to review at tiny.ca the reasons for this project and the benefits thereof. So thank you for the question, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you, Jeff.
All right, the next question is from April Cole. It is related to the use of public space. And the question is, as a result of this new build, will smaller community centers be closed? For example, will this new public space replace the public community center in LaFontaine, thus resulting in the closure of that center? And I think Tim will answer this one.
Great. Thank you, April. No firm decisions have been made about what we're doing with our additional space that we do have throughout the township. We realize that these community centers are important for the local areas, and that's the name community center. So no firm directions have been set at this point for these additional facilities. As you know, we do have 3 rental facilities in Wybridge and the TTCC on the Concession 8 and on the LaFontaine Community Center that's located in the heart of LaFontaine. So at this point, no firm decisions have been made, but the public definitely will be keeping people informed as we move forward. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is from Ryan. It is, what is the increase in cost of construction due to the curved shape of the building? And I will ask Janet to weigh in on this one, please.
That's a great question. We do recognize that shapes that are not at 90 degrees can perhaps present additional cost. But the reality is we're also trying to achieve a modular build using modular construction. And we actually have designed this building to be modular. And we are looking at ways that we can ensure that there is less waste than would normally be had from construction using a modular approach. And the fact that this will also be built in a factory and just assembled on the site, we think will mitigate and support our use of a curve at the back of the building. We also saw the site is so enormous that we can site this building utilizing passive strategies for daylight and sun angle orientation, and that the curve can help us enormously with some of those energy conserving considerations. So we think we've kind of mitigated the expense associated with that, and that the reality is when it comes to construction assemblies, it'll actually be segmented as opposed to really curved. Like the glass won't be curved, it will all be segmented. So it's a great question, but we saw the opportunity that this site allowed us for free orientation of a building having any shape. So I hope that answers the question.
All righty. Next question we have is from Karen. It is, what bank or federal institution are you going to be applying to for the loan? And Haley would like to answer this question.
Thank you, Karen, for the question. At this time, we have not come to council with any options for financing, but there are several options available to municipalities. One of the best options with the lowest rates would be through Infrastructure Ontario. Their debentures are typically much lower than a typical loan from one of the big 5 banks. They actually have longer repayment dates. They're unsecured, collateral, you don't need collateral like you would with a typical loan. So for a municipality, Infrastructure Ontario is typically one of the first options that they would look at. In addition to this, the Federation of the Canadian Municipalities offers the Green Municipal Fund grant, and along with that is the loan portion for the remaining amount. So all of this information has been provided in the Public Works report. I'm just going to give you the number here. PWR 01324, which was made public on April the 3rd. So if council wishes to proceed with moving for financing with these entities, that is what we will do. But in the future, we'll be coming to council with several options from banks, from Infrastructure Ontario, from FCM, for council to consider.
Okay, the next question is from Irina. This one's going to be going to Janet. Does the plan include future pandemic preparedness and measures? And is there a staff wellness area?
Yes, when we look at the clearances for the workstations, everyone is 6 feet or more apart, which would abide by the pandemic requirements. We are also, I think the township is also looking at kind of maintaining some degree of flexibility as to whether people work within the building or can work remotely, depending on the kind of work that they do. And staff wellness, we still have to sit down, just like we are with members of the public, to determine what you would like to see in terms of space amenities for public use. We also have to sit down with staff in the next phase to look at the facilities that they would like to see. We do at the moment have staff lockers and showers for when people want to bike or use passive recreation. We have a large lunchroom that can accommodate a number of different sort of sitting arrangements that flows out onto its own outdoor space that will be screened. So kind of beyond those, we are waiting to get staff input. Thanks for the question.
Okay, next question is from Pam. When evaluating bids from construction companies or other service providers, could local tiny contractors get extra weight for being local?
Thank you, Pam, for the question. When we go out to tender, unfortunately, we cannot give extra points or whatever because the construction company is local. that would be unfair in the trade, and we're not permitted to do that. We have to keep it competitive for all to be involved, as this is public monies that we are looking at. However, we do encourage our local contractors to either A, be part of the bid process, or B, keep an eye on this so they can find out who the companies are that are involved so that they can ensure that they get their name to those individuals. Obviously, with a tiny contractor, there may be advantages that they have from geographic location. However, all these have to be weighed in at the end of the day. It's a competitive process that involves everybody, and we cannot provide that type of special consideration through this type of process. Thank you, Pam, for asking that question.
Tim, if I can just add to that, because it's a great question. In addition to what Tim has outlined from a procurement point of view, from a design point of view, we are ensuring that we've done our due diligence so that whatever we are specifying for the project is something that is locally available by a lot of local companies. So we can kind of help hone those decisions by ensuring that we're not specifying assemblies or materials that are kind of difficult to get locally or are, somewhat out of reach for people who are local to the township.
Alrighty. The next question is from Mary Jane. She says the skylights could be a point of weakness in a natural disaster, and they won't last 60 years. Why have they been included? And I think this one will go to Janet.
They've been included to impart a little bit of natural light into interior spaces. We think that that's really important. And when we look at the 60-year lifespan, we're not expecting that absolutely everything is going to last 60 years. Obviously, structurally, that will happen, but there are certain assemblies like fenestration, like roofing that has to, or even like HVAC equipment that has to be maintained or replaced, but it won't be as replaced as often when you're looking at specifying robust systems. So we will ensure that while we don't have to be blast proof in terms of post-disaster, this will not, mitigate something falling out of the sky and hitting the building, but it will for extreme weather. So we will be our engineers will be looking at that in the design, but we're not wanting to remove the skylights because of the other benefits that they impart to the public building. Great question, though, and we are mindful of the ramifications of all of the assemblies that we are specifying.
Okay, next question is from Kim. Can you list the names of grants and government funding that will be applied for to offset the cost? And what other fundraising ideas are you considering aside from public taxes? And Haley will take this question.
Thank you, Kim, for the question. As I mentioned earlier, we are applying for the Green Municipal Fund through FCM. There is a potential grant for $200,000 for studies, and then there is another potential grant of $1.5 million if we are going for the max grant. Then we also have the option of the sale of the existing administrative building. Currently in the Public Works report that was issued, it was an estimate of about $2 million in revenue. There has since been an appraisal which was included in Public Works report, PWR. Getting the number here, sorry about that. PWR 02424, and the appraisal came in just above our estimate. So those are the funding sources at this point in time that we are potentially going to offset the impact on the cost of borrowing. And then the mayor has, I guess, a second part answer to your question.
Great, thank you, Director. I'd just like to add on another with besides just the construction funding, but the ongoing funding and some of the maybe more unique ideas we're looking for, both for the initial construction, but an ongoing basis as well. So some of the ideas that have come out that we've had so far are naming rights to certain portions of the building, if that's an opportunity for rooms and things like that. Buy a brick programs have been successful in other areas. Actually, leasing space, possibly. Some people brought up the idea of a coffee franchise or opportunities there that we could have in the building to add to the community hub aspect of it. And these are all just points. It's a great question. Points out the opportunities for the ad hoc committee that we're finalizing on July 29th to be able to evaluate all these options and other options that are being used not just in Ontario but throughout, and to exhaust our opportunities for we say non-traditional funding sources for this unique facility, and to represent an opportunity for people to get involved and to come up with ideas to provide let's say initial funding, but then ongoing funding as well to add to the facility as a whole and add to the community. So thank you, Director. I think that's about it.
All right, next question is from Kelly. It appears that the design has progressed quite significantly thus far. Given that the cost of all this build is one of the main concerns for residents, how has this been taken into consideration when designing the public spaces, whether that be materials, efficiency of the building, layout, or size and purpose of the public spaces? And Tim will answer this question.
And thanks, Kelly. I'll start off, and I'm sure Janet would also have some input at the end of this. Through the building design, that will be one of the critical items that's going to be commencing once we've kicked off phase 2 with our architect, and that's when we get into detailed design. Also, we'll be making sure that we have a construction manager that's involved that will be the person that represents the township. So it's the township's best interests are the objective of the construction manager. So we'll be making sure that throughout this process that costs are managed as effectively, as efficiently as possible. And I think throughout the presentation, one thing that Janet did provide is the materials that were being used, the efficiencies and building layouts and size and purpose for the public spaces. These are the types of things that are top of mind for us, especially when it comes to the materials. I think Janet did a great job on talking about what the net zero and the impacts of all these are. The public space is really what the intent of these PICs is to make sure that we capitalize on all these public spaces, make sure that what we develop and design and build meets the intent of the objectives of the building, which is to provide community space. So I think when you take a look at the presentation, the information provided, as Mayor Evans just talked about the ad hoc committee, that we are looking for that public input. And then as we do our design with the construction manager, we'll make sure that the costs are managed, and we bring in a top quality building meeting the environmental objectives, and also bring it in for a price that's acceptable. I don't know if Janet, if you have anything further you'd like to add to that.
No, Tim, that was, I think that was pretty comprehensive. And just thank you for noting about the materials. We are really committed to the net zero carbon. And I think that in doing this, we also eliminate a lot of materials that you would normally see in public buildings. For instance, like suspended ceilings or assemblies that are used that we don't have to have because of the way that we're proposing that this building be constructed. But the bonus is that you get a beautiful interior of natural wood. So we're kind of seeing that we may be paying somewhat of a premium for the structure, but we've eliminated a whole lot of other things. So we think that we actually get far more value out of what we're proposing. So we think that value is kind of built into the design. So it's just a matter of what are the unique spaces that haven't been factored. At the moment, we've earmarked, I think, 12 kind of public areas that we want your comments back on that are just kind of part of the design kind of that has been built in that we don't see necessarily as being associated with any additional cost other than the community room. The community room could also be something that is, a rental facility.
Okay, next question is from Dave. When and how will we see answers to all the questions you received during the last session, as well as this one, even the ones you didn't want to answer? If the restrictions you've imposed on this session result in time left and questions still remaining from folks who had more than one question, will you include them? And Tim will answer this question.
Thank you, Dave. As explained at the top of the PIC, we're trying to get as many different residents' questions answered with the time provided. And as I did indicate, if there is time left at the end, then we will still go back to the top of the list and make sure that we answer as many questions. And that's the objective, is that we want to make sure we answer everybody's questions. Questions that aren't answered, that are posted on here, we do get those. Those are recorded, and our intention is to provide answers to those. But I also want to just remind everybody back to the original intent of the PIC and what the objective we're trying to make here. This is to do with the public space. I think the mayor has been very clear on the where we're moving with the building, so we will not be addressing those questions that have been asked and answered previously. But just to confirm, Dave, if we have time, we will definitely go back and answer as many questions as we can. Thank you.
Okay, next question is from Ryan. This building looks like a Ferrari when the township only needs a Camry. Why is the design so extravagant? And Mayor Evans will field this answer.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. I appreciate the question. A little bit of an analogy. I've never driven either, so I can't really speak for one better than the other. But what I can do is put in the context of the building for Ryan. We are looking, we have taken an initial look at the staff portion of the building. Currently, from all of our 7 facilities, we're utilizing about 18 to 19,000 square feet in our facilities. The new design is approximately 21,000 square feet. So we've increased approximately 2,500 to 3,000 square feet over what we currently use right now. So in terms of overall design, I don't see this as being anywhere near egregious, especially when we look at this facility to be in place for a minimum of 60 years. And I hesitate for anybody to crystal ball on what we're going to need in terms of space, but inflation is what it is, and chances are that it's going to increase. So you can take your comments on that. But the other side of the coin is that besides the 21,000 square feet that we have, yes, we've enlarged the public space because we want to give more options for the customer service area. Our current facility, as you know, is very, very limited in terms of that. And we have a council chambers and 1 community room. That's it. We haven't put in a gymnasium. We haven't put in theaters. We haven't put in a library. This is a pretty bare bones building. And we do have a basement slated, and that has specific emergency preparedness requirements that we have to put in place too. So this design, albeit bigger, and granted that is, and than what we currently have, we're being, I think, very prudent and very judicious in terms of adding space, and by no means do I feel that we're in any way frivolous or exceeding practical and reasonable expectations of the public. So this is a facility that's going to transition from our current space a little bit larger, but we're also going to be managing as Janet mentioned earlier, some of the workplace functionality, so hoteling and that type of thing moving forward, and those are incorporated as well. So back to the Ferrari and the Camry. I'd be quite happy with the Camry, gets you from A to B, and that's what we're looking to do. So this is not about being showy. It's not about making a building that's appealing to people's extravagant natures in any way. I want the public to be aware of that, and we're looking at making sure that our staff have sufficient, safe, comfortable facilities for the next minimum 60 years. Anyways, thanks for the question, Ryan. Appreciate it.
All right, the next question is from Drew. Has staff or anyone else quantified or estimated the exclusion costs that are not included in the building budget identified as $25 million? These include furniture, moving costs, building insurance fees, design and professional fees, winter heating costs, site equipment, and dozens of other excluded costs as identified on the township website. And Tim will answer this one.
Great. Thank you, Drew. And we know that the budget is top of mind for everybody. And from our last report, you'll see what's called the Schedule D. A Schedule D is a very high-level estimate of the facility. Previously, we provided another estimate through the architect through our Public Works report, and both these numbers came out fairly close. Now, included in the Schedule D, there is a large contingency that factor that's built into this, and a lot of these will be incorporated within and then cover off through that 25% contingency cost. So I encourage you to go through the Schedule D that was provided through public document and take a look at what's made up of the Schedule D components, but also emphasize down at the bottom, you'll see the contingency costs, which cover off a lot of different items. The other item that I want to make sure that the public is aware of, and this is why we chose the construction manager route, is to make sure that the person that's managing getting this building built on behalf of the township has full control of the costs. So they are an experienced individual that will be able to look at items, see where we can save money, and still maintain the quality costs that, or the quality that we want to have within the building. So this is a great process that's used by many people, and it is used to keep the costs in line. So with the Schedule D, we're very confident of that costing that's been brought into at this point. And moving forward, the second part of your question does have some operating costs, and there is a difference between operating costs, which are annual costs for heating, lighting, these types of things, and maintenance of the facility. So those are two different types of costs, and I know there's questions coming up below that relate to those types of operation costs. We do have operating costs within our current facilities. We are consolidating several facilities into one facility. Do we have accurate costs at this point? We have estimate costs, but not accurate. And these are the types of things that we continue to look forward to. With the new building, because of the net zero objectives that we do have, there will be certain aspects of costs that we absorb today that we won't be absorbing moving forward into the future. Every facility, you have to clean the windows, you have to clean the floors, you have to make sure that there's toilet paper. And so we do have those operating costs, which will be consistent with what we currently have today. There's other costs as far as there won't be any gas costs, for example, because we won't be having any gas at the site. We'll be generating our electricity. We'll be managing our processes through things like the ground source and those types of objectives in the solar PV. So we won't be comparing apples to apples with this old facility that has different fixed costs on it to keep the place operational, hot and cold, and the new facility will having different ways of looking at it. So from an operation cost, we're not anticipating any significant increases per square foot, and a matter of fact, we're hoping to see some good reductions in cost, plus the environmental responsibility that we will be using within this facility. So I hope that answers your questions. Thank you very much.
All right, next we have Pam. Will there be an opportunity to link the Tiny Trail over to the 9th concession site? And I believe Tim will take this one.
Great. Thank you, Pam. Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think the one nice thing about this site is actually it's very large, which gives us lots of opportunity to provide exterior and interior community space, such as trails, making sure that we recognize the environment that we're in and helped us restore that site and bring it back to a lot of the natural type of features that the land does provide. We also have County Forest beside us as our neighbor and also across the road. Close down the down concession 9 going west is the rail trail. So a lot of these are very close, and what we plan on doing is taking full advantage of our location there from an outside participation, so that residents can not only enjoy the grounds that this facility will be on, but also our neighbor, being the County of Simcoe, and also very close by, which is the rail trail. So we do plan on taking advantage of these natural assets that are readily available to us to ensure that we continue to make this as a real community hub and an environmentally focused site moving forward. So thank you, Pam.
Okay, we have another question from Dave. In the April 23rd, in the April 23rd council meeting, there were 2 undercover OPP officers in the chamber. Will they be there again, and will that reduce the number of citizens that can attend? And the mayor will answer this question.
Great, thank you, JF. Thank you for the question. First of all, it's not appropriate for this venue. We're discussing the public portion of the building of the Tiny Township Administrative Center. We're looking for your feedback for that. As far as maintaining safety of staff in this building, we will not be disclosing what and when or what actions we will be taking, because in the interest of keeping our staff happy and safe and happy. We have had some issues in the past with accessibility. And yes, we have called upon our OPP brethren to help us out. And but at this time, we'll keep those directions confidential, and if needed, but we will be doing everything we can to ensure the safety and security of our staff as they work on this site. Thank you.
Okay, we've got another question from Pam. Will local nonprofit groups be able to use the community rooms for free while charging for-profit organizations or non-residents? And Tim will take this one.
Great. Thanks again for the question. The intent of our community space within this room, plus also we do have other community spaces, but this is why we are looking for this community room and what the public would like to see as part of it. We do have a great policy in place right now for our facilities, which we encourage nonprofit groups, youth, seniors types activities, and also within our programming, which is typically either free or very affordable. And we're going to continue to make sure that we encourage people to use our public spaces and provide them with a cost competitive, and in some cases it's free, in some cases it's 50% off, depending on what the organization is and what they represent. So that we're going to continue to make sure that these public spaces, we get as much use out of these as possible. These are great township assets, and we encourage all of our residents to take a look at what these public spaces that we do have for rent. They're very extremely competitive, and they're nice facilities located in great areas. So thank you, Pam.
Okay, we have another question from Drew. What are the design and professional fees for Unity for the professional services, and are you suggesting this will come out of contingencies? And I think this is a follow-up to his last question.
Yep, thanks, Drew. The fees we did present at our last council meeting, and that'll be looking to council reviewing that for ratification at our next council meeting on August the 7th. So those fees are included and shown in there what they will be. Right now, the TTAC is recommending that we proceed with the 6.63%, and there's some other provisions that the report does cover off fully. These are the types of things that do get looked at through our contingency within that Class D estimate. Plus, there's all sorts of other costs that are included in the Class D that we'll be looking at and refining as we move forward, especially when we get the detailed design and the construction manager on board. Thank you.
Okay. Another question from Pam. If we go over budget at an early stage, could we have a backup plan for a lower cost design or materials, such as more use of drywall instead of the wood shown in the slides? And I believe Tim will answer this one, and I wouldn't be surprised if Janet chimed in.
Yes, thank you. And I know Janet will chime in on this, especially since it was covered off on our slides. And I think there's a lot of benefits to the design that was provided, taking advantage of our natural materials as far as net zero objectives that were all detailed out there, and the building materials that are selected support that. Moving forward, this is the type of buildings that we need to start looking at, so that we're not taxing our environment in order to have buildings built through things like drywalls and drop ceilings. And what we're providing is a environmentally responsible building, which will help us move forward. I think at the last PIC, I did mention some of our objectives for greenhouse gas reductions. We committed to a 30% reduction in greenhouse gases. And this facility will provide a lot and help us get those objectives, which are key for helping us do our part to contribute to the environment moving forward. But I'll let Janet kind of emphasize some of the items that she raised during the PIC today. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. We are very much committed to the environmental imperative. And so we have chosen a very clear path of how we can avoid utilizing certain assemblies that are extremely polluting. And we do have a number of ways that we can apply value engineering in the course of design, as well as in the course of procurement and construction. All like cost control is not just happening early on in the process. Cost control is something that we affect every single day until the facility opens. So we are not looking at, well, we're going to go back to a default building of normal materials, because that would require complete redesign of where we're at. But every step of the way, we are very mindful of costs and not wanting cost overruns. We have risk registers. We have a construction manager who is basically going to be shopping for every tender that is released. So I'm confident that we're going to meet our environmental goals, and that the environmental goals aren't going to come at extreme cost overruns. So great question, and I think we have a path forward to mitigate those situations.
Okay, the next question is from Dave. It relates to project goal number 4. So how many complaints have you received about the level of service? Do they justify taxpayers paying $50 million? And Tim will answer this one.
Yeah, thank you again, Dave. The complaints that we have, our level of service, I believe that we do have a great level of service here at Tiny. This is not just to address a level of the amount of complaints. What this is to provide is a facility that provides a sense of community. The current facility is not accessible. We are able to get to the front office, but within the service, the level of service goes a few ways. It goes to the level of service to the public that we offer. It also provides a sense of community for the area. When you come into our front lobby right now, and we covered this off at the last PIC, confidentiality and privacy is very difficult. People come in with some very sensitive items that they'd like to discuss with staff, and we just don't have that area that people can go and receive that level of service where their confidentiality is respected and maintained. So that's important to us. It's also the level of accessibility within the facility to make sure that it's easy for everybody for accessibility. From a staff standpoint, for example, we are very limited in what we can provide as far as our employees for accessibility. The building is not designed or built for that level of accessibility. So the service level goes to our staff. It goes to also our residents in making sure that we create that sense of community. This new building will have a large service counter so that when staff is talking to an individual, they can be away in a corner. And if it needs confidentiality and a little bit bit more security than that. Then we also have small boardrooms that we can bring people in for those sensitive type discussions. So this is not just to address a level of complaints. This is to enhance the level of service and continue to build on what I feel Tiny has is a great level of service, and this will continue to build on that and give people the confidence they're coming into a facility that they can be confident, and confidentiality is maintained, plus also provide the accessibility for both staff and residents alike. Thank you.
Next question is from Drew. What are the projected costs for hiring a team, and will they also come out of the contingencies from the Class D estimate? And I believe Tim will answer this one as well.
Great. Yeah, thank you again, Drew. Yeah, the construction manager at risk is something that will be part of our contingencies overall cost of the building, and we will be looking at that. This goes out to a tender, so we're going to follow our procurement process for making sure that we get the most competitive construction manager. Plus, also, price is one thing, but also you want to make sure you get quality. And so we'll be assessing the construction managers at risk and making sure that they not only provide us with what we feel is a fair value for what they provide, but also provides us with the experience and the knowledge to build this type of facility to make sure that our costs are controlled. The construction manager is a key part of this, and I don't necessarily look at that as a hard cost to us. I look at this as being an opportunity for us to make sure that we manage this project well, we stay very competitive, and when you do this with the proper construction manager at risk, they're worth their weight in gold in what they can do and provide for the township to maintain that we control costs, we get quality, and we get the facility built on time and what we expect. Thank you.
Okay, next question is from Karen. She says, I don't understand the total amount Infrastructure Ontario will lend. Is there an amount or limit? As you mentioned, the rest will be looked into. Also, a lower tier municipality cannot get debentures, so how does that work? Does the County of Simcoe oversee the loan or apply for the loan on Tiny's behalf? And Haley will answer that one.
Thank you, Karen, for your question. So Infrastructure Ontario, when I was speaking with them last year about this project, there was no indication as to any sort of max amount. Infrastructure Ontario lends out multi-millions of dollars to many municipalities throughout Ontario. So I anticipate that there is not a limit as per this project. Further to your question, I'm just going to go back. I lost the question, sorry. There was a few other points that you wanted to ask about. So the Township of Tiny is not part of a regional municipality. There is legislation, I believe this is what you're referring to, within the Municipal Act that a lower tier municipality of a part of a regional municipality must seek, I guess, approval from their regional upper tier. The Township of Tiny is part of the County of Simcoe. County of Simcoe is not a regional municipality, so we are not subject to this legislation. And I'm just looking for the other part of your question. Just give me 1 second.
Whether we can borrow money.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I lost your question, Karen, and just trying to locate it on my screen. Just give me a minute. We'll go on to another question and I'll come back. Oh, here we go. So yeah, I think I did answer all of the questions because we don't require the County of Simcoe to oversee any of the application for these loans.
All right, our next question comes from Kelly. What is the current use of the existing public spaces within the township's various facilities? Are the current facilities booked? And is there a significant shortage of public spaces in the current mix? How were the proposed public spaces determined? And Tim will take this one.
Great. Thanks again, Kelly. The current facilities, we have the ebb and tide of any type of rental facility. They're busy, especially like a TTCC up on concession 8, where we see a lot of wedding activity in the summertime. Also, our facilities are not just, it's for public space. We also use it for a lot of our programming through our rec program, which has an extensive amount of programs that we offer for the public, like our senior speaker series and a variety of other different type of recreational programming, plus also our youth activity that we do all summer long. So our public spaces do get used well. Can we get more use out of them? For sure. We would like to see that. We encourage anybody to look at getting this. One of the key things with our public spaces is also creating a sense of a community hub, as we talked about. When we start putting in things like an exterior type of activities that we can have there, and also larger gatherings, for example, like in our council chambers, this type of community space is valuable to have to create that sense of community. And that's what we're looking at, how we deal with our current public spaces moving forward. Ideally, we would like them all used all the time. That's what we ideally like to see, but we'll see how that moves going forward. But right now, our facilities are available. They do have times where they're busy and where they're not. But as I indicated, the one main thing that we want to do, and with this new facility, is creating that central hub, both for the interior and the exterior spaces, which includes a community room that we can use both for the public and for our programming and various other different activities that we have. Thanks, Kelly. I hope that answers your question.
All right. The next question comes from Dave, and it's directly for Janet. What makes you believe that net zero funding will dry up in the future?
We are seeing, that's a really great question, and we don't know, but we're anticipating that everything is going to just keep getting more expensive. And if we were to not build to meet the net zero benchmark, that it's going to become just far more expensive in the future to try to achieve that. So why wouldn't we try to do that in today's dollars rather than in tomorrow's dollars? But we also see that as building codes become more stringent in terms of climate resilience, designing for extreme weather events, and the energy efficiency updates. Every time there's a new code, the energy efficiency requirements are far more stringent, that once it becomes net zero legislated within these approvals, then we assume that that incentive funding to achieve that earlier is not going to be there, because it's just a requirement. You have to meet it in order to get a building permit. But right now, in promotion of trying to push the industry to a more sustainable way to build, we want this project to be kind of a showcase of that and to take advantage of the funding that is available. So thanks for the question. Great question.
Okay, the next question is from Don. While the environmental assessments are taking place on the property, will the township also be considering future development opportunities on the site? It would be great to explore opportunities for additional recreational space or an arena that would be available for community use. And Tim would like to answer this one.
Thank you, Don. That's a great question, and that's really the heart of what we're trying to accomplish through these 3 PICs, is to get this type of input. This is what we're looking for, so thank you for bringing this forward to us. Yeah, the environmental assessments are key for us, obviously, and you note that they are taking place on the property. And that'll help us also determine what we can do on this site as far as future opportunity for additional recreational space. When we, with the environmental items that we do note within the property, we can treat these, make them very public. We can show the public what these are about. We can help maintain that. Plus also we can provide education to our residents and our visitors to the township. When they come on our site, they're going to see some of these environmental items that we've identified and how the township is being responsible in managing these, and also provide education for all of our residents and our youth moving forward. As far as additional recreational space or an arena like you spoke about, for community use. This is exactly why the council has decided to develop an ad hoc committee, and for July 29th is the latest date at which we will accept applicants for it. And we encourage you, Don, or anybody else that's listening, to put your name forward so that you can use this opportunity and this avenue to express what you would like to see as we move forward for this community space on this site. And that would be different things like you mentioned arenas, and I'm not saying there will be one, but this is the type of thing that we can look at. And it may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, but it's on our radar for future planning. What we can do, as this facility is going to be around a long time, we want to make it a community hub. So this will help us determine and set our capital planning for the years and years to come, things we need to save for, things we need to think about doing, and then we can make sure that the public's voice is heard on what you want to see on this facility to make sure that these types of things are answered. So thank you, Don, for taking the time to help us move forward. And again, I'll do a shameless plug again. July 29th, please put your name forward to help us make these types of decisions. Thank you.
All right, another question from Dave. So the path to net zero can be achieved in a retrofit of the current building with LED lighting, automatic dimming, solar PV, etc. Why do we need to spend $50 million for a total new build? And I believe Tim would like to answer this question.
I'll start answering the question, and then I know through the presentation, I think Janet did point out many of the items that we'll be looking to achieve this net zero objective. We just can't do on this particular site. Some of them are like as far as the ground source and these types of things. We're also dealing with an existing infrastructure, this building itself. I think one of the main things that Janet did point out are the construction materials, different types of things there. This facility is tired. It is getting old. It does require a lot of upgrades. And you're correct in that there's some things we can do. The LED lighting, we've already taken advantage of that. We had previous grants earlier, and J.F. Robitaille, our engineering manager, brought this to our attention, got that done. So we did the LED lighting. There's all sorts of different objectives that we've tried to do here, but we're dealing with an existing infrastructure. And in order to move forward, in order to make sure that we're ready for the next level of net zero and what we need to do to be environmentally responsible, this facility will not take us down that road. Based on that, I'll turn it over to Janet. I don't know if Janet, if you have anything further that you'd like to add.
Thank you. And that was a really great question. You know, we did look at previous reports that have been published on that facility. And while it's, relatively robust structure, it's essentially a house with a walkout basement. And we would have to sink considerable money into it to ensure that it would meet a post-disaster requirement structurally. So once we start to strip it down to its structure, then we're kind of rebuilding essentially a house. We might have an addition onto it, but it seemed to us to take that money to build a brand new facility and to not have to then spend additional money on relocating staff during that renovation period and the cost of renting accommodation for them and then moving them back in. We said, at the end of the day, you could build a new facility and have this existing facility be repurposed into something that would be easier to retrofit for, say, use as a library or doctor's offices or something. But in terms of the, trying to meet the ambitious goals that we have for the project, we didn't feel that there was value in sinking that kind of money into that facility. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question from Drew. Will additional staff need to be hired for daily maintenance, including building system operations, maintenance requests, daily custodial, grounds maintenance, snow removal, etc., of a new 33,000 square foot building? And I believe Tim would like to answer this one.
Thanks again, Drew. That's part of the operations that you have to maintain. Fortunately, within the facility, when the facility is built, it will be all brand new, everything under warranty. We're not anticipating that we have to grow our custodial staff at this point. We do have support from the grounds maintenance. We do have a parks department that's right across the road that currently that helps out with our parks and cutting the grass and outdoor maintenance. Snow removal. Fortunately, we do have our Public Works Operation Group, which does snow removal. We have various different plows and sanding equipment that we can maintain. So the idea is that we're going to use our current, a lot of our current staff, and but it must be noted that when you do grow, and we've outgrown this facility, so we need a larger facility. With larger facilities does come some larger maintenance costs. So that's a reality moving forward. I'm not going to indicate that there's not going to be any change in that. There will be some changes, but with growth and growth of the facilities, these are the types of things that happen. The township staff is growing, as you know. And this building, from a maintenance standpoint, requires a lot of extra maintenance now that the new facility will not. And so I think moving forward, we will be looking at continuing. We have an outsource for helping clean our facilities. They come in, they do a weekly cleaning. We'll be continuing on with those types of activities. So hopefully that answers your question, and I thank you for bringing that to our attention, Drew.
All right, question from Dave. Please explain how the building size will increase by 75% at least, and our population growth will increase by 20% at most. And he notes that both of these are published numbers. And I believe Tim wants to answer this one.
Yeah. Thank you. I know the size of the facility. I want to point out, if you go back to a previous Public Works report that was published, it does talk about the size of the public space. We are increasing the size of our chambers. And so I do want to call that, I think from one of the previous questions, there is worrying about how many people can come into our chambers. Currently, we can have 57 people in our chambers. The numbers that Janet pointed out was, I think, 135. Plus, also, we can open up the lobby to have even more. This is something that has, on certain subjects that do come up with our council, a lot of restriction in that space. We also have the community space. We also have the increased size of our lobby. And the increased size of the lobby is for a variety of reasons. It's for so we can have community space, plus also, like we talked about, our level of service with our individuals. I think with the so to compare back to the size of the growth of the population compared to the increase in the size of the building, we're not really dealing with apples to apples. I think I would encourage you to go back to the report, take a look at what the public space aspect of this is, and that you'll see from the staff space that the increase in size is appropriate. This is why we want, again, I'll talk about our ad hoc committees to make sure that we capitalize and utilize this increase in space that we have that is going to be your space, the public space, and making sure that we provide a great community space and that we get that increase in size, that we utilize it. So I think we're not comparing apples to apples when you say population growth versus the size of the building. You need to consider all the factors that go into that calculation. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question from Karen. What do you say to the taxpayer that does not agree with the federal government pushing rural communities like Tiny having to build a green building? And the mayor would like to answer this question.
Thank you, JF. Appreciate that. Thank you for the question, Karen. Kind of a two-part answer to this one. First of all, what the federal government does is up to the federal government. We're a municipal government. We manage our affairs. We look after what we have jurisdiction over, and that's what we do. So it's up to you. Want to know what the federal government thinks about it? Then you'll have to go talk to the federal government. We don't advocate on that and lobby them. But the more important aspect, the second part of the answer for you is you're asking about the rationalization. I believe here they're pushing rural communities like Tiny to build a green building. Building is just one part of a larger segment of our whole population here in Tiny, with the directive that came from previous council in the form of the OP that dictated that the Township of Tiny would be an environmentally focused community. And that's built into our official plan. And that's what the majority of the people of Tiny want. They want to be able to protect the environment. They want to make sure that it's here for their grandchildren, just as it has been for them, and to maintain not just all elements of our environment. That same direction is echoed and mirrored in the current council. One of the 4 pillars of our strategic plan as a council this term is managing our public lands and protecting the environment, and we've done a number of actions already. The interim control bylaw, a number of other is probably our big one, where we are adhering to that policy and advancing that policy of protecting our environment and making sure that our environment is here. The green building aspect is something that aligns with that policy. And we're in a unique position right now where we can gain funding advantages from the federal government and take advantage of that to benefit our Tiny official plan and our community as a whole. And so dictating why we should be moving in a green direction is what the people want. And we will continue to do that and move forward in that direction. Thank you for your question.
All right, we're going to go back to Dave's question. How was the preliminary cost of this building exceeded by a factor 5 to 10 times the cost to construct 2 recently announced schools in the area? And Tim would like to answer this question.
Yeah. Thanks again. The school buildings they're different than what we have here. They're totally different functions. This building that we're building is our staff building. We're building it based on the approved municipal building design that the province of Ontario did put out, that we've shared with everybody. And from the cost of it 10 times, I struggle that a school is going to be a tenth of the cost of this building here. That would be $2.5 million. You're not building a school for $2.5 million. So I think we've identified the costs. They are 2 different types of functional buildings. Again, this building does have a lot of public space that we're looking for input on how to develop that properly. So I think from that standpoint, the costs that we've identified through the Schedule D, you've seen the costs. You've seen those costs are real. And I just want to make sure that you take a look at those costs. And if you have specific questions to line items within that, I think that would be more appropriate than just a general question that we have right here. So thanks, Dave.
Okay, another question from Karen. The feds are pushing you to reduce the greenhouse gases. That is why you're doing this, I thought. And the grants come from the feds. So I think this is a follow-up to her last question. And Tim would like to answer this one.
Thanks again, Karen. The objective of building the building is not just to reduce greenhouse gases. That's one of the aspects that we do moving forward with the need for this building. The need of the building was established based on what the level of service, for what staff needs, for all the reasons that have been talked about before. When we looked at building this building, we want to make sure that it does support our objective for greenhouse gas reductions. That is what responsible municipalities are doing. This is how we have to move forward. I think in Janet's presentation, if municipalities and government buildings don't take the lead on these types of objectives in developing our new buildings moving forward, then who's going to? We need to be the ones that step up. We need to be the ones that take advantage of all of the technologies that are available that we can reduce our greenhouse gas. So having a 30% reduction is a goal. However, that goal should be followed no matter what. These are our responsibilities as municipal leaders to make sure that when we build new buildings, they are environmentally responsible, whether it be for the land that we build on or the building that we're actually building. These are objectives that we put in place independent of the goals and objectives that have been laid out to us from a government standpoint. We will continue to make sure that we hit these objectives, and there's a variety of different things on greenhouse gases. This is through our equipment that we purchase, hybrid and electric vehicles, emerging technologies for things like our plow trucks, and making sure that we stay on the leading edge of what we can do to contribute to our reduction on these greenhouse gases. So thank you, and I hope that continues to answer the question about greenhouse gas reductions in our commitment as a municipality. Thank you.
We have another question from Karen. Are you going to sell the current building, or you are going to sell the current building so someone else can pollute? So you're saying the current building pollutes. Tim would like to answer this question.
I think using the word pollute is not a fair statement. The building itself, you know, it's constructed, it's built, it uses natural gas, we use electricity, we use a variety of different things to keep this building up and running. And what we're looking at with the new building is reducing these gases and the greenhouse gases that are generated from the current structure. This building utilizes some current technologies, but it does not contain and have all the emerging technologies that we want to use to reduce these greenhouse gases. So with the new building, that's something that's going to be determined moving forward. That'll be a discussion that'll be held at council level. We've had it assessed. We know what the building is worth. If it is sold and other people buy it, you know, I do know that in people, when they purchase buildings, they want to have the most efficient building possible themselves. So if somebody does pick it up, it's within their prerogative to do what they want with it. But generally, in most cases, people use the incentive for efficient buildings is cost savings at the end of the day. So the current building, I think pollute is a bad word to use. I think it just utilizes and it uses greenhouse gases that we want to make sure with new technologies and new buildings that we address moving forward with a new build. Thank you.
We have another question from Drew. How many individual staff from existing external sites, such as the fire department, which are outside of the current administrative building on Vaughan Beach Road, will be joining the head office staff in a new building as part of what staff and mayor has stated? What is the specific number, please? And I believe the mayor would like to answer this question.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Drew, for the question. Yeah, we had touched on this last meeting, and we did update our numbers for you just so we would have this. So in terms of a good point to that current site has outbuildings, portables as well. They're currently occupied by our IT department, our Parks and Rec department, and our Public Works department. Plus, we have facilities in Wyville with regards to fire, and a facility on Concession 8 with regards to water. So when we look at amalgamating those positions, and I'm speaking about full-time positions only, this does not include our sizable seasonal ramp up that we have every year. We're looking at the following numbers. So we're approximately a minimum of 30 people, broken out by four full-time people from our fire department, amalgamating into the new facility on Concession 9, a new TTAC. Water department, 12 people. The Public Works and administration with regard is 5. IT department and asset management department included in a current portable of 4. and our recreation, Parks and Recreation Portable has 5 full-time people. So minimum right now, we're looking at 30 full-time positions that would be included in the new facility that are not currently in the main facility here at 130 Palm Beach Road. So, and I will again caution you that is strictly full-time. That is not seasonal. So a lot of our 7 facility is our kind of community space and community areas that we have that are taken up by seasonal staff, be it bylaw, be it Parks and Rec. There's any number of work positions. We have a sizable component of seasonal staff as well that are not currently being included in the new facility on concession 9, but will be included there on a seasonal basis. So approximately 30 positions right now that we're looking at. Hope that answered your question, and thanks for the question. Appreciate it.
We have a question from April regarding public space. It is, if after these PICs, the majority of the public do not want or support more public spaces or the new build, as you said, we have 3 buildings we can rent now in various communities. Would council consider a smaller build purposely built for the functions of a council and administrative office? And Tim would like to answer this question.
Thanks again, April. And it's, as noted earlier, the concept that we have has been approved by council. We are moving forward with this, and the intent of these meetings is to make sure that we make sure that the public has input into the public spaces that we've identified within this facility. So we're moving forward with the concept that's been approved by council, and so what we're going to do is we're going to encourage to continue to use the various different rental facilities that we have, plus also maximize on the community space that we'll be developing within this new building. So that answers that question, and I'm just looking at the time now, and we're at 11:58. And I think one thing what we'll do is we'll take one more question, and then what I want to do is cover off the next steps prior to the next PIC that we'll be holding coming up soon.
We have a question about the design from Brad. Did you consider building to the Passive House building standard? And I will let Janet answer this one.
Yeah, that is definitely something that's on the table for us. The passive design is definitely a very efficient way of building. But when we get into the energy modeling, we're going to be looking at generating an energy model based on the net zero standards that have been published by the Canadian Green Building, as well as the Passive House as being, I think, a slightly higher standard. So we're going to look at what the difference in cost would be to go from the net zero standard to the Passive House, because it has a higher degree of passive strategies and insulation. So thanks for that question. It is top of mind, and that informs our energy model analysis.
Okay, thank you, Janet, Director LeBlanc, and Mayor Evans, and also all the staff that helped support pulling this off. JF Robitaille for being the moderator, and also our IT and communications department for helping us through this, and our clerks department. It took a lot of people to pull this together, and I really appreciate all the detail, plus also the public that took the time out of your day to ask all these great questions and helping us develop what we feel is going to be a great facility moving forward and provide that sense of community hub that we want to accomplish. There will be some next steps following the 3 PICs, and I do encourage, there's the next one is a hybrid meeting. It'll be on July 31st. It'll be in the council chambers. It'll be here in our council chambers where the public can attend. Staff will be summarizing, after all these three are complete, staff will be summarizing comments related to the public features for the TTAC, for the TTAC committee. And again, the TTAC ad hoc committee, which council has developed, we're still encouraging people to sign up for up until July 29th, and then council will be able to decide and establish this committee to continue to assist us as we develop this facility for that public space. Number two, as part of our next steps, is the construction manager RFP process. Will commence. That's something we're working on right now, and so that'll be something that we want to have completed. Obviously, it'll be into the fall of this year to get the construction manager in place. And then also at the August 7th, we'll be reviewing the phase 2 to move on with the TTAC design with Unity as the architects, which is a key part. That's how we get into detailed design. And then 3, as far as our next steps, and there'll be multiple steps, but this is the 3 for now, is we're going to finalize the design and the costing to include suggestions from the PICs and present to council for consideration at a future council meeting, which will include the costs and various other different types of activities. So we will continue to keep this as a public process. And again, I thank everybody for your time and effort you put into this today. Thank you for the public for participating. And we look forward to our fourth PIC actually on July 31st here in Council Chambers. Thank you, everybody, and please have a great, safe day.
That was the update from Township of Tiny. Thank you for watching.